Welcome to the podcast. Now that I'm engaged, how do I get married? I'm your host, Kevin Dennis.
And I'm August Yocher, co-host and brand manager at Fantasy Sound Event Services.
In addition to leading the charge at Wedding IQ, I also run Fantasy Sound Event Services, a lighting and entertainment company based in Livermore, California, that I founded over 35 years ago.
Each week on this podcast, we'll explore a new corner of wedding planning so you can prepare for your I-dos without the stress.
From budgeting to booking vendors to the day of drama.
Let's talk smart wedding planning.
All right, folks, welcome to another episode of Now That I'm Engaged, How Do I Get Married? And today we are with Tabitha Roberts, event planner from Roberts & Co. Events. So Tabitha, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We're excited to have you. So Tabitha, tell us a little bit about yourself and how we got you here today.
Absolutely. I am a veteran of the wedding industry. I've been planning weddings and events and social and corporate for the last 16 years, even though I look like I'm 23, baby. And I have a wonderful team of a couple of associates that work out of the DC market. And we do a lot of destination and kind of local to our area in that kind of luxury mid-market. It's been a really fun run thus far.
I love it. All right. And so today we're talking about a fun topic, tradition versus trend, which is, I think it's going to be, because I really personally feel weddings are becoming very non-traditional. So we're going to dive into that today, but we're going to be touching on how to navigate the emotional landmines of traditions against trends and social media driven wedding life. So as we jump into this, you know, you've been planning weddings for over 16 years. When couples come to you feeling torn between tradition and what they see online, what usually is at the root of this tension?
Oh, I mean, I think there's a lot of things that come with it. I think a lot of it is the expectations that come with the layers of weddings, right? Because weddings are not as simple as person A is getting married, person A is paying for wedding, person A gets to make decisions. There are people that are contributing financially. There are people that have had expectations the couple's whole life about what's going to happen. The couple has expectations. And then really a lot of our couples are going to weddings. I think their parents are not necessarily as invested into the wedding community because that stage of their life has kind of moved through. And so they are rooted back in what they're used to seeing maybe from decades prior or the limited resources they have. So there's this push-pull that can exist between, you know, what the couple might want, what traditions they want to uphold, and what family things that the parents might want. And how do we bring all of that together to find whatever this new dichotomy of the wedding landscape looks like?
Yeah, it's definitely tough. And I feel it's like this constant comparison as well. Especially like you're saying, couples are going to their friends' weddings too. They're seeing what's happening there. They're thinking, do I need to do this? Do I not need to do this? When I used to work at a venue, I had a couple that went to a wedding at that venue that was about to be my couple for their own wedding. And they saw they had a French fry bar and they were like, oh my God, we want that. But is that weird if we copy our friends? And I was like, no, absolutely not. If that's what you want, totally do it. But I also understand tradition and parents and family. Like there's so many variables to consider.
I mean, I think that there's lots of people involved in it, but there's also different dynamics of couples too. So in the same vein, we have I would say we have an office in Richmond, and our Richmond couples tend to be more traditional in nature. They want to do exactly what their friends have done because it is steeped in that tradition or culture or expectation, versus in DC or more populous markets or cities. They are more trend moving. They want to be ahead of the curve. They don't want to copy their friends. They don't want to do exactly the same thing. They need to reinvent themselves while still trying to stay true to their love story. So there is a push pull that exists there because, you know, then what happens when you have a Richmond couple that comes to DC? Like, how do those two things come together? There's no right or wrong answer. I think it's trying to figure out how to be comfortable in navigating what it is that you want to do for your wedding, and just like living in that truth and not second guessing yourself is what creates like a less stressful situation.
That's one thing I always like when you're saying not a right or wrong answer. I'm always I like to say that to them. And also, there's no rules, you know, like we do. Yeah. Zero rules at this wedding, you know, so let's do what you guys want to do. So I think that's where they got to fight through the
Mhm.
traditions that are holding them back from doing what they really want to do sometimes.
Oh,
So,
absolutely.
all right. So social media has completely changed how couples experience the wedding planning process, as you know. So how do you see Instagram and Pinterest like shaping expectations for better and for worse?
I think that social media is like a pinhole of the experience. It's like looking through
Mhm.
the peephole of a door, trying to figure out, what the rest of it is on the other side of the door. You're only getting a small glimpse of what happened. And so I think when people look at it through that lens, they then say, well, I want to have that, but that doesn't mean that they necessarily bucked all the rest of tradition. And so
Hmm.
it's really being true to what it is that you decide you want as a couple and then maybe taking some inspiration off of social media. If you saw like a really great Instagram reel of someone's moment at their wedding, that was just a tiny glimpse at what the whole entire day looked like. And I think taking it with that kind of grain of salt mentality is really helpful in planning because otherwise you're planning somebody else's wedding for your own. And instead of just cherry picking the stuff that you like through social media. I also think that as a wedding professional, we see nothing but social media filled with weddings, and so we see the trends happening over and over and over again, and then therefore we might not want to repeat it, or we might not,
Hmm.
Mhm.
again, especially as a planner. So I have to kind of step back and say, did you see this at other weddings, or have you only seen this on social media? And where is it okay to duplicate, copy, create, and how does it make sense to your story? Like you were just talking about, if you want a fry bar at your wedding because your friend had it, that's awesome. But how
Yeah.
do we spin this to be yours and not just duplicate it because you saw it and it was cool, like, make it make sense to you, I guess.
Yeah, we do a lot of drapery installations and whatnot, and so we've been seeing a lot of like the same photo from Pinterest
Oh, yeah.
over and over again, and it's just like, we should make it a drinking game every time
Oh my gosh.
a couple emails us that photo because it's like, oh, here we go again. That's what like that's what it's going to be for 2026 is this crazy drapery in the ceiling.
It's the trickle down effect because I think like my clients for next year are end of next year have some of those same images, like those
Hmm.
moody tones and the swagging drape and the dripping candles. And that's cool. I did that this year and it's kind of pulling downward into next year. But I tell my clients when it comes to social media and Pinterest, like your design process is an evolution or your trend or the thing it is that you want to see. So maybe we revisit it in 6 months. You loved it
Mm,
right now because it's all you're seeing, but in
Mhm.
6 months, do you still love it? Do you still feel like it's you? Are you still excited about it? And then if the answer is yes, like we continue to move through it. Sometimes getting other forces involved, like parents, to understand the trends or the things that people are doing over tradition, that's a little bit harder and more nuanced. It takes a little bit more chipping away at the ice block to get it
mm.
there. But I don't think anybody should make decisions for their wedding 12 months ahead of time. You should revisit things periodically. Don't beat a horse to death. Like, don't come back to it every 3 weeks, but come back to it in 6 months or come back to it a couple months before your wedding. Revisit your design deck, revisit your plans for drapery, revisit your even your song choices. Like, your
Yeah.
tastes will change over 12 months. And then step away from it as you get closer and be confident that you made choices that you really loved.
That's funny you said step away from it because I always tell couples, I'm like, you need to put on blinders and stop looking at Pinterest because
Yeah.
you're you're costing yourself more money,
Yep.
and we've totally changed the whole design of the wedding by the time it's all said and done.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. And I think that for our timeline, the guidelines I give for that are if we do your design deck 12 to 9 months in advance, then when we do your mock up 6 months before, let's touch it again and talk about it. I don't need you living in social media
mhm,
and I don't need you living in Pinterest. And then when we do your walkthrough, let's do one more touch on it to say, is this still where we're at? We still like this color. We still like this tone. We're not remaking the wheel, but we
Yeah.
are
yeah,
visiting it because there are places where everybody has blinders and they cannot see they need to, like, put them on and not go back to Pinterest or not touch it again. And then there are some places where you go, "Let's really make sure this is the thing that you wanna encapsulate your whole wedding around." And then it's great. You feel confident in it, your team feels confident in it, and you get excited to show it then to somebody else.
yeah, and I'm sure that's true with every aspect of the wedding from,
Oh, yeah.
like, catering to, flowers to everything. It's
Mhm.
just like, once we're there, we're there. We're moving forward with it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and Instagram and Pinterest, I know it's like you see only the best of the best and it doesn't come with the price tag. So I know sometimes it can be very overwhelming. But what are some wedding traditions you feel that couples are pressured to include
Yeah.
even when they might not resonate with them? Because I think that happens, like, especially with these trends.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's a list. So starting with like people. Okay. So, everybody has that expectation. So we tell our clients traditions that go with your family. Sit down and have a conversation with your family about what is the expectation of what they think your wedding's supposed to be and just go ahead and get it out of the way
Mm,
and set some boundaries for that and say, I'm open to hearing what you have to say. But the traditions around that are your siblings, are your parents expecting your siblings to be in your wedding party? And do you want them in your wedding party?
Mm,
Down to um, you know, how big of a wedding are you going to have versus small? And are your parents' friends invited versus not? And who's paying and who's not? Those traditions can create an immediate stress level for couples that can be mitigated with just having communication, as well as the biggest one I think we see are things like the old school traditions, first dance, parent dances, speeches, toasts, cake cutting for public show versus stopping the party versus not. These are all conversations that derive around the expectations or traditions that have been passed down from generations. Some couples are like, well, that's a non-starter. Of course, I'm going to have a first dance. And of course, I'm going to dance with my dance. And some couples now don't want, ironically, to be the center of attention on their wedding day. They want to be immersed in their wedding day, but they do not want to be standing up there doing a performative act if it doesn't feel authentic to their relationship or the person that's with them in that space, or even so much as like speaking. They don't want that spotlight on them. They just want to be a part of the merriment. And so that's where we say, like, it's okay to have boundaries. But again, you need to communicate those boundaries to your family and make sure that they are understood, understand there might be a fallout from it. And again, are you comfortable with what that looks like? Because,
mm,
like you said, there are no right or wrong answers to these things, but there are real feelings involved. There are real
mhm.
thoughts. Like if I'm the mother of 2 sons, if my son said to me, I mean, mine they're 10 and 14. He said to me now, like,
But still,
"Mom,"
yeah.
yeah, "Mom, you're not gonna get to have a mother-son dance." I'd kill them, but, like
Yeah.
like, that
Valid. Yeah.
breaks my heart, but also, future me might understand that relationship differently if I know my son. My youngest doesn't wanna be the center of attention. I would understand where it comes from. But some parents can't see through that and don't understand that relationship. We had a young lady that got married last year and made it very clear her dad was not walking her down the aisle. And
mm,
her
Mm,
dad had had that vision in his mind his whole life. They had a very contentious, strained relationship, and she set a boundary and she hugged that boundary for her life for 9 months, and we
mhm,
really respected her for it. I empathized with the parents. It was very uncomfortable for them. He was very uncomfortable the day of the wedding because he knew how it made their relationship look, but she knew what she needed for her peace of mind as she started this next chapter of marrying this man she was
mhm,
starting a family with, and but she was very clear. She explained it to him. She stuck to it. She reemphasized it. There was no wiggling around it. And he, for the same respectful space, honored it and didn't push. So, what happens after that when we're out of the wedding is none of my business.
no, yeah, I was
yeah,
gonna say, yeah,
But it is a space where I said, "Good for you," because this
yeah,
is the symbolism of starting your new family. So,
yeah.
it's uncomfortable to be in those positions, but if it is not something that feels good in your core, I'm a big believer in being an advocate for that, so long as you're able to deal with the emotional fallout that comes with it.
Well, and you gotta
yeah.
100% respect, that she made a decision and she stuck with it and,
Mhm.
however it made whoever feel, this is what she wanted to feel like on her wedding day, so good for her.
Yeah, I think
So
generationally it's just different. Like, our
yeah,
parents don't wanna deal with their feelings. We wanna talk about our feelings, like,
1000%.
how
Mhm.
the 2
yeah,
come together.
yeah. So on the flip side of everything, so are there any traditions you still think matter more than couples realize?
I think the etiquette standards of food, drink, hospitality, and providing for I do believe that most couples do understand that, but I think that it needs to be reinforced more. So, you are hosting an event and it is your event, but you still need to provide for them. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
the old adage of no cash bars at a wedding very much applies. Like, and it's something that still exists, which I don't want anybody to feel like they have to come and they're not taken care of. And that is a tradition that I think doesn't need to go away. If you're having an event during a mealtime, you need to provide a meal for everybody. And the new 2026 version of that is you need to accommodate for dietary restrictions
Yep.
because you want to take care of your guests. Those are the traditions that I think are hopefully never gonna lose time, and
Mhm.
then I think unpopular opinion is gonna be stationery. I am a diehard paper stationery girl. I think the gift and the art of stationery should still exist, etiquette should still exist, and if you wanna do online RSVP cards, I'm not gonna fight and die on that hill, but I do think having a way to communicate with your guests in a formal setting when you're asking them to spend a ton of money to come to your wedding and
Yeah.
be a part of your day is the necessary tradition that should be upheld. I know that things like paperless posts and online resources kind of have changed that landscape a little bit, but if you're providing for them and you're having this magical day, like send the invite. Do the work and do the legwork, the
Oh.
legwork on what that looks like.
There's still something nice, like, getting that in the mail or even, like, when someone writes you a thank you note, like, they could send you a little thank you text, but when you get
I love a
physically
thank you note.
someone took
I
the
love
time to
mail.
write a thank you note and sent it to me, I mean, that means so much.
100%. I mean, and I think it's funny because our couples often are like, "Well, nobody wants mail." I'm like, "I want mail."
Yeah.
There's never a time where you've gotten a piece of mail that's not a bill, where
Yeah.
you've been like, "Oh, I wish I didn't get this nice card." Like,
Yeah.
it says something, and those are the 2 that I think don't need to stick. I do think that the one tradition that still should stay on the board, but maybe is morphed a little bit is cake cutting. A lot of people don't realize the symbolic act of cutting your cake. What we tell our clients is that this is the first chance you guys have to communicate as husband and wife. And how you communicate in this moment, in this task that seems easy but is not, really dictates what communication could look like for the rest of your marriage. And in that little tiny moment, even if it's out of the way, it's not fanfare, it's in the corner, it still gives you that space to have that moment. And I think it's a takeaway. I miss the days when people saved the top tier of their cake and you
Yeah.
had all of that to go back to. But, the tradition of that act together as your first act as husband and wife, supposedly. Um, I love that tradition and I want it to stay around just in its kind of new Gen Z form.
Here on the West Coast, couples are doing silent cake cuttings, and
Mhm.
so they'll go over and the dancing's still happening, and they go cut the cake, and usually it's an elder, like, grandparent, an older aunt or uncle that are yelling at the DJ and like, "Hey,
Yeah.
you didn't announce the cake cut. They're cutting the cake," and they get them all riled
Mhm.
up.
You
No,
But
don't
for
need to
sure.
break the dancing.
yeah. No,
And then
and
it's
Well,
and a lot of couples don't like the attention on them, so
right.
that's another reason why they do it as well,
It's a
so
lot, and you don't wanna like, I had a DJ yell at me a couple years ago, my favorite DJ in town, "Stop me. If you break my dancing line one more time for cake cutting." And I was like, "It's not me." So then we
Yeah,
started having the dialogue with couples to say, "Do you want a discreet cake cutting?"
yeah.
And they're like, "Yes, we don't wanna stop the party, we don't want fanfare, but can you get our parents? Can you get our grandparents?" And then we serve those VIPs first. So, like, it's still a special moment that can exist, because, our older generations were waiting for the cake cutting to happen so they can leave. So it
yep.
still needs to exist. It's just how do we pivot to make tradition a little more trendy?
They need their coffee and their cake.
Coffee and
Yeah.
cake. That's all I need at the
Well,
end of a wedding day.
and one more thing on cake cutting too is we recently had a baker on the podcast and she said something that I just thought was so cool too and I didn't even realize is she says it's one of the only sense memories of the day.
Mhm.
Is like you're eating the cake, you're remembering the flavor and you're connecting it with that memory and I was like, "Wow, that's really
Mhm.
special too." Something I wouldn't
Love
even
that.
think of. Okay, so I know you brought this up right at the beginning of the episode, and I know we're eventually going to have to dive into it, but one of the biggest stressors for engaged couples is navigating the parental expectations. So, especially when parents are contributing financially. So, I know that's a big one, but how do you recommend couples start having those difficult conversations?
I mean, I don't think there's ever an easy way to rip a financial Band-Aid off, but I do tell
Mhm.
them just start having it. And it is uncomfortable. And we coach our couples and say, like, that generationally, finances, politics, and emotions are not
Yep.
something that your parents want to touch. But if you're direct about it and you try to lay out some guidelines and some things that you want, it will kind of open the doors a little bit easier. But trying to say, hey, let's be realistic. I'm not asking you for the moon. What is it that you are comfortable contributing? Do you have an, expectation that you would be contributing? I have felt A, B, and C. And then you cautiously toe that, because one of the first thing that's going to happen after a couple gets engaged is where families know this conversation is happening. And then
Mhm.
that a way they can establish with parents, what is the give and take going to exist there? And then the next question is, if it's a specific allotment of money or an open-ended fund, what is it allocated towards? We talked to our couples in the beginning about, what are the dynamics of where the money's coming from, and who's traditionally paying for what, and what are those expectations that we would normally see, but let them work it out amongst their family. And then say, are you supplementing for your expectations against your wedding? Or we've looked at your Pinterest board, and what your parents or whomever is donating to your wedding fund is not going to be the same. And then the other half of that is going to be, how do you deal with the parents' pull on the money and their say
Yeah.
in the planning? Every relationship is different. I think that we've had family situations where the parents are like, whatever you want to do is fine. We're giving you X amount of dollars. What you choose to do with it is great. Here are the things we want, or here are the number of guests that we want. And then we need to work around those constraints,
Mhm.
versus we have parents who are just the minutia, the penny are being held, in
Mhm.
a tight grasp, and we're fighting for the things that we want. But I think that saying, here are our priorities early. These are the things that are important to us as a couple. These are the things that are important to our families, and taking that weight in consideration, and then having internal open dialogues about what it is. And so that those priorities can be established early for the budget reasons. And then the rest of it, if the couple needs to pick up where parents don't want to, they understand what those financials are. I really wish there was, like, one clean answer for this, but we have been through
Yeah.
1,000 versions of what this looks like. Trying to explain to a dad who has no concept of a wedding budget why we need different chairs is like
Mhm.
a beast of another nature.
Mhm.
Um, and sometimes the bride just needs to say, or whomever just needs to say, "Oh, it's because I want them." And they're like, "Sure." And then other times it's like, "Let me show you 30 pictures of why this works." And then once we convince them, then it works. Or sometimes they just say no. But there's a push pull that has to exist in just communication. That's really honestly what it boils down to, is just being able to advocate for things that are a priority and communicate and then respect people's boundaries. It's not worth breaking relationships over when it comes to money. And ironically, my mom will kill me if she ever listens to this. Years ago, many, many moons ago, I got married and we came into a war over money because my
Mhm.
parents had offered some money, my grandparents had offered some money, and my budget was $18,000. I'd like everybody to just digest what a wedding in 1903. Um,
1903.
but basically, it came down to alcohol, and my parents do not
Mm.
drink, they do not like alcohol, they did not want alcohol at the wedding, and I was 25, and I was like, "What do you mean no alcohol?
No chance.
No chance." And what ended up happening is my parents pulled their funding and said, "We don't
Mm.
wanna do this." And so my husband and I corralled the money as baby entrepreneurs straight out of college and said, "This is the hill we're gonna die on."
Mhm.
Ironically, my friends drank in the parking lot because we had a beer and wine bar. They drank
Yeah.
liquor in the parking lot.
Yeah.
But I realized it wasn't worth fighting with my family about. It wasn't worth battling over money and having this thing. So I said, let's take it out of the equation. And if we want it bad enough, we're going to fund it. And that's the way we approached it when we got into the wedding scape, because I was unwilling to damage my parental relationships over money. And I knew that I couldn't fight any more than I already had. So, and that's okay. That's their boundary to have. Now, as an adult, I
Yeah.
go, that's perfectly reasonable. At the time, I was an unhappy camper and I was very poor, but it was the wedding that we wanted to have. So I had
Yeah.
Yeah.
to give up the money. And that's what comes with choosing to buck the tradition of what's coming from the people that are giving to your wedding.
Alright, so speaking of traditions, etiquette, and everything, so are there any specific etiquette rules that are truly outdated, but still cause a lot of guilt or confusion for couples today?
Ugh. I actually had one this week that was funny. love my moms because I know they listen. One of our moms could not fathom that people would not bring gifts to the wedding because historically, generationally, you brought a gift. You registered for
Mhm.
China,
Mhm.
you brought a gift to the wedding. And we explained that, nowadays we have card boxes and cards and it is etiquette to bring something, but it's cash. And she was like, that feels like the mob. Like, why would you just pass by people?
Put
And I
it
was like,
all in a
no,
bag, yeah.
I was like, "No, no, no, it's in an envelope." Like, I'm not taking cash, I'm not picking it up, but, like, it was one of those where I said, like, "This is an etiquette rule that's evolved, it's a little outdated to bring a gift." If people bring gifts, I actually feel like it's annoying because then the couple has to schlep the
Mhm.
gift home, and that one was one that is outdated but has evolved, and I think that the feelings on that, like, she was shook at the idea that somebody would be bringing a gift. I think that the expectation of parent dances, while it would break my heart, is becoming vaguely outdated and it does hurt
Mm,
people's
Mm.
feelings.
Yeah.
And then I would also say the family expectations, traditions of traditional parental roles in weddings. Um, you
Mhm.
know, let's be real. So many families are no longer the core families they were when the kids were growing up. And you're talking about kids of divorce or strained relationships. And those expectations of and traditions of dad needs to do a toast, dad needs to do this, or mom's expected to do this, but not speak, or both parents need to sit together in the front pew of the church. Those are things that are becoming outdated. And it is okay to say the familial harmony is more important. If my mom has been the core provider for me her whole life and my dad was not that person, I'm going to do a mother-daughter dance.
mhm.
I'm going to let my mom speak or both parents can speak or my dad's not saying I give her away. Both my parents are going to say something. I think those traditions need to ebb and flow because what a traditional family looks like does not look like what it looked like 20, 30 years ago. And so
No,
that is an interesting one because I think that our parents do believe those things should be kept in a quieter home versus being put on display that we're not like all copacetic all the time.
I agree.
Yeah, it's incredibly hard to navigate and it's different with every family, so I understand. Do you think there are any ways that couples can include tradition symbolically without it letting that dictate the entire wedding?
Oh, I mean, completely. I think having a different layout for your reception kind of
Mm.
bucks against tradition, but you can still have symbolic moments. So maybe it's not we're having ceremony, cocktails, reception, it's a plated dinner, speeches, toast, dances. Maybe we change the dynamic of the whole flow of the day and it's more open range and stations and dancing is beginning, middle, and end because we want to
Yeah,
party and then we go into an after party. But the tradition of in the middle of that we're going to do these traditional moments. We're going to have the quiet cake cutting. We're going to do the parent dances. We had a couple that didn't want to have a traditional ceremony. They were like, we don't
Mm,
want to walk down the aisle. So they invited everybody to cocktail hour. Everybody came to this cocktail hour. And in the middle of cocktail hour was a tiny platform, and they stood on that platform and they delivered vows in front of everybody. They just had this like kind of they were all mingling and then they just came and stood up on the platform. They said, thank you for coming. They exchanged vows, they kissed, and then we went into a party, and
that's
that
really cool.
was so much fun. But it was still we're gonna have the tradition of the vows because that's important to us to exchange this promise to each other in front of our loved ones, but we don't need the pomp and circumstance. We don't need you sitting in a chair staring at us for 35 minutes. That was hands down one of my favorite weddings I've ever
as
done.
you say, that sounds really cool.
It was really cool. Underneath of a whole canopy of greenery and disco ball. I mean, it was perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, love it.
Wow, yeah, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
All right, so what's one decision couples tend to overthink because of outside opinions?
I think that's loaded.
I know,
Yeah,
I could answer that 1,000 different ways. I
yeah.
think I wanna tackle it from food and beverage. I think
Okay.
the
Mm,
idea that you can only serve a certain kind of meal, dinner, food based off of the masses. I
Mm,
think that there this tradition of at least in the Mid-Atlantic. If you go up to New Jersey, it's like a whole different kind of party. It's like 6 past hors d'oeuvres, maybe a station, 2-course, sit down, plated salad dinner. And couples don't want to go fish and beef and past weird canapes. They wanna do interactive stations. They wanna push the boundaries on food. They want to change and say, "Hey, our first course is gonna be" we did a bone marrow first course. I don't like bone marrow. I thought it was gross,
Mhm.
but they loved it. Their guests
Yeah.
tried something new. I could watch the guests across the room find something new that they loved. It was presented really cool, and that's where it's like, this fit them. It didn't fit tradition. Their dinner was this, beautiful spread that everybody found things that they loved inside of, so it was family style. I think those are ways where the tradition can be pushed to the side, but it does not resonate with people who come in and go, "Well, I expect I'm gonna get all of this food, but it looks different."
Yeah.
And that can cause some thoughts there, but I think that people become pleasantly surprised by it. And the experience then changes their perception of a wedding and it makes the wedding more memorable. Just being, more curated in idea.
My wife and I got married like 17 years ago before late night snacks were cool. But we got married on New Year's Eve. We got married on New Year's Eve and I wanted some drunk food. And so I was working with the caterer to like, and the venue, like what to do. And they were wanting to charge. I was like, I love nachos. They wanted to charge me like $10 a person for nachos. And I thought that was ridiculous. And then
Mhm.
the planner I was working with, that was also the venue planner. She goes, "Hey, go get take and bake pizzas. We got 12 racks in the oven and we'll put out pizzas." And it's crazy because it's cost me less than $200 for the 12 pizzas. And still to this day, pizza people stop me and go, "Your wedding, man, the pizza came out." And it was like, and
It
I'm
was
like,
transformative.
but it was the cheapest thing we did. And they
Mhm.
people still to this day, umpteen years later, remember it. It cracks me up. So
I think when you make a connection or a moment or a surprise, and it's getting harder to do. Social
yeah.
media is making that a lot harder to
Mhm.
do. It does change things. We had a wedding where we knew the buses were going to be going from a small town to like a bigger town. It was going to be a 30-minute drive. And we did. We ordered pizzas. We literally ordered Papa John's.
Mhm.
We gave everybody a roadie and a piece of pizza on the bus. And the next day when I saw everybody at brunch, they were like, "That changed my life." Like it
I bet.
because they got to the hotel and they weren't like all gross. And I was like, yeah, like it's the tiny moments that can change things. And I think that when you go against the expected tradition or the thing that has to happen, um, it actually goes a long way. Like guests will remember that and they value it more. And then eventually, maybe then it changes what tradition looks like.
Yeah, we had a couple, we were working with one time that, In-N-Out Burger is a huge thing out here in the West Coast.
Mhm.
Eventually, it'll make your way out to you, but
Cheese
but
flakes.
they literally had a burger and fries on every, seat of the bus,
Yeah.
and so every guest,
Yes.
and they had no idea, but it was crazy because you could smell it, as
Yeah.
coming out of the bus.
You're like, what is that?
Yeah, but
Mhm.
it like, same thing, probably changed those people's lives on the way home.
100%.
Yeah, and I just feel like you just end on a high note too, because I feel like the end of the night can dictate so much of what you felt in the overall day. And if, yeah, I had a burger, I had a pizza, I'd be feeling really good. So,
I'm not gonna lie to
yeah.
you, as a vendor, there's nothing I love more than a late night bite or a snack as I'm walking out the door.
Mhm.
'Cause I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
"I'll take the leftovers, thank
Yep,
you."
Yeah.
it's my
All right.
favorite.
Well, I think we are getting close to the end here, but we wanted to ask, just to kind of leave our couples with, what's the biggest mistake that you see couples make when trying to balance tradition, trends, and family expectations?
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the bigger mistakes that happens kinda leans in on the trend side, and I think
Mm,
it's
Mhm.
this idea that some people won't lean into the trends. It's kinda the opposite of what we talked about today, which
Oh.
is some couples are really trend adverse because they're afraid that it will mark their wedding space as this moment in time, or it's too trendy, or it's too niche. And I think that it's okay to mark your wedding with a trend or an idea, color, concept, decor, even though we talked about like, the trends that exist for where it is right now. Because I can say, I mean, it has been 17 years since I got married. Like I remember what it was like in the wedding industry back then, not because I was a vendor, but because I remember pouring through magazines and looking at trends, and it was before the age of Pinterest, and developing what I wanted my wedding to look like. And I can look back on that fondly. And while I might not be showing my pictures to everybody because they can be a little outdated, that's photography styles, I still look back on it and know that that's who I was at that time in my life,
Mhm.
which is maybe different than who I am right now, but it still resonates to some degree. Any trend you pick up is because you like it. It's a piece of something that you enjoy, or your style, or your aesthetic, or your food, where you are in your food journey, culinary space at that time. And so I don't look at it as being trendy per se. I look at it as honor where you are in your life right
Mhm.
now, because in 10 years, you'll be in a different space and you will look back on that space fondly. Don't lean into a trend because it's flashy and it's a flash in the pan. Like, make sure it resonates with you longer than a couple of, a TikTok moment.
Yeah.
But don't be afraid of trends, because it's just a piece of your, same as clothing style or the car you're driving, or the
Mhm.
foods you choose to eat. And so you can merge those ideas with the traditions that are valuable to your heritage or your upbringing or your parents, and still have trendy moments in design and aesthetic and food and culture and whatever that is. I just feel like more clients than not are afraid of trends, and they gravitate to tradition because it feels safe and it feels expected. Um, I believe in weaving a story of your wedding that is the two of you, where you've been, where you're going, and that is really this moment in time, these 3 years around your engagement, newlywed bliss, and getting married. And it's okay to kind of make it, encapsulate it, like, those boxes that you buried in the ground and you
Yeah.
put together.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Same
yeah.
idea. That's my wedding album. Like, nobody needs to know that I had plums and like fuchsia flowers at my wedding, because that was what was in trend then. But the
Yeah.
rest of it still looked like me. My dress looked like me. My bridesmaids were my friends. All the rest of it looked like me. I just was in that trendy space because that's what was cool at the time. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with living in that space.
I know. I look back and we had brown tuxedos, and I'm like, "What was I
You're a
thinking?"
brown tux guy.
Yeah, yep,
I tell people about that all the time. They're like, nobody wore brown
yep, I
tuxes.
did.
Brown
My friend
tuxes,
who got married last year, they had brown tuxes,
it's
so,
back.
like,
It's
it's
coming
coming
back.
back around, you know?
Yeah.
What was your secondary color? That's the question.
Pink.
Yep. It's either pink or Tiffany blue.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep,
Mhm.
we did pink.
Of the same era. That was us. We were in between brown and Tiffany blue, or like an eggplant and fuchsia. And I was like, I'm going bold. I'm gonna be
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah.
None of my clients will ever see my wedding. But I
I know, I kinda say the same thing. No one needs to see what I
no
did
one needs
because
to
it
see.
was so bad.
You also need to see baby me. Let's not
Yeah.
cross compare.
All right, Tabitha, thank you so much for being here. So how can, our couples find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on social media, Instagram, TikTok at Roberts and Co. Or our website, robertsandcoevents.com. Definitely hit us up online. Would love to share more about, trends and tradition and all of that. It's such a fun, kind of unique topic to dive into.
Mhm.
All right. And folks, we'll have all of Tabitha's information in our show notes and the email blast that goes out. And Tabitha, we can't thank you enough for being here, sharing all your knowledge. You were great.
Appreciate you.
All right. Bye, guys. Thank you for listening to another episode of Now That I'm Engaged, How Do I Get Married? We'll see you next time. Bye.
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 To our listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Now That I'm Engaged, How Do I Get Married podcast.
Brought to you by Fantasy Sound Event Services.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode. Please get in touch with me or August if you have any topic you would like us to cover.
Or if you're struggling with your wedding planning, please be sure to submit a question to podcast@fantasysound.com.
I encourage you to check out our other episodes on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast. And if you're a fan, we'd love if you would subscribe to the podcast and leave a review.
It helps others find our podcast so that they can learn from our guests too. And to everybody listening,
Happy wedding planning!